That's my stock in trade.
You
Now
trading what?
on, and who's the fuzzy one this week? No
Probably
one
me.
looked
I
quite
haven't shaved for a
defuzzed,
while.
actually. Yeah, I need to shave. Actually,
Oh,
we're all kind of equally unshaven.
Tim, you missed running Dak's performance review last week. We had to discipline our poll administrator, but hopefully he's learned his lessons this week.
What was the
Whose
discipline?
phone is beeping?
Oh, it could be
No,
my.
I'm-
Hang on, it might be my.
Apparently, I'm fuzzy this time. I think it's always the last person to join that they pick they make the fuzzy one.
One day Riverside will get broadband installed and all this will go away.
So, Cole, I saw your comment about the big story being Meta earning all that money from dodgy ads. I think we are going to. I think we're going to. It's one we'll come back to. We're going to cover. Oh no, sorry, that was Ali who sent that. Sorry, sorry, Cole. Ali kind of said that the Meta story is the biggest story. I kind of agree, but it's one that's going to roll on. I think that one. So we will mention it at the end, as you shall see. But yeah, I suspect. Yeah, it's probably one that's quite dubious to start talking about immediately, because of for legal reasons.
I wondered if that might be one for Roche or Olivia, due to
Yeah, someone who actually knows what they're talking
Nominated
about. Lee,
grown-up, you know?
is that what you're saying?
yeah, because I'd written a bit of stuff about it, and I wondered what would happen to you, Tim, if you'd put up, an advert in PC Pro for baby hand grenades or something like that. Who would come down on you, and etc. etc. etc.
And what was your conclusion?
I don't know. I was going to ask you, but now I'll never know.
Right, okay.
Your adverts for baby hand grenades will just carry on.
I do remember we did have some dodgy adverts at the start of PC Pro where it was because they were selling. You remember those adverts with women, scantily clad women holding graphics cards?
Women in adverts. Yes,
Oh,
I remember
yes.
those days.
Lee, you've been caught on camera with your name tag
With my name tag.
by running Dak. If you look on Discord.
I've just opened Discord, and of course it's doing its traditional update, so I'm going nowhere on Discord at the moment.
Oh, I don't use the app anymore. I just use the web app. Okay, so the question about Roche, we are hoping will actually be back at the end of this month. She's slated for the 27th, but she's been doing big things, as we shall cover in that podcast. Yeah, maybe we'll force her to talk about that at that time, because Olivia can't do
You try and
anything
stop
her. Right.
Guaranteed she's not listening to this. Right, it is 1
this
o'clock.
ramble. Well, why don't we do a podcast then? Hello and welcome to the PC Pro podcast. PC Pro, PC Pre, PC Pro. On the 13th of November 2025, I'm Tim Danton, Editor-in-Chief of PC Pro. With me today, I have John Honeyball.
Afternoon.
Afternoon. Lee Grant.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We were very formal this afternoon. And Mr. Barry Collins.
Why, hello there.
Ooh, you cheeky. All right, so I think we should probably start off with things, because otherwise I'm just going to go crazy. Lee, we're going to start off with you. School curriculum. What on earth is happening? Tell us.
If only someone knew. The basis of this story is this week the UK's Department for Education has responded to what has been put forward as the Curriculum and Assessment Review, which makes suggestions on how teaching and learning could be improved for kids and young people. And the review was basically from feedback from those working with and associated with the education sector. Now, there's a whole stack of stuff in here because it goes through the curriculum, and a lot of it is really worthy of discussion. But obviously, we're going to spotlight some of the changes to the teaching of computing. And first, I'm just going to throw a couple of stats out there to highlight, those of us that have been out of education for a little while, just where we are with computing in the UK. So, computing in some form is a statutory foundation subject from Key Stage 1 to Key Stage 4, which in old money is children aged 5, primary school, up to the ages of 14 to 16, when GCSE or O levels, if you want to go back even further, when that sort of kicks in. So basically, primary and secondary, there is some form of computing. So kids will or can go on to take GCSE computer science, though not many, it would seem. When it was introduced in 2013, 2014, the take-up was 3%. By 24, 25, the latest figures, they'd managed to get up to 13%, but it's not great. There are also other vocational qualifications called the Technical Award in ICT. That's part of BTEC. The 24, 25 figures for that reveal that was only at 3%. And 81% of schools do offer some form of computing-related qualifications, but as I've mentioned, the take-up's not great. A-levels are doing better, though. The 23-24 figures show that take-up has doubled since 2009 to 2010 and is now at 2% rather than 1%. So, we've got a bit of a problem here. And it reminds me of the conversations you guys used to have on the podcast, when it was in black and white, when, Nicole used to bemoan about the curriculum just teaching Word. It doesn't seem we've actually sort of moved forward too much. Anyway, this review points to many things, mainly the inconsistency in teaching, aside from a lack of computer teachers. On top of this, there is something called the Programmes for Study, which is basically the curriculum guidelines for teachers to follow to get kids ready for GCSE if they're going to take it. And the Key Stage 4 version of this is basically 3 bullet points. That's all the guidance there is. And I could read these to you, but you'd all fall asleep. And none of it, there's no specific. I'll read you the first one. Develop their capability, creativity and knowledge in computer science, digital media and information technology. How the teacher takes that and gets to a point where they can teach a syllabus is really up to them. So you can see this is massive inconsistency. And of course, this is government guidance for teachers who are wanting to sort of, try and do something with computing. But there's also real concern that a lot of the real world applications that are now out there, not including AI or possibly including AI, they're not just part of this curriculum. And, and the GCSE is what is called computer science. So it focuses too much on certain aspects of computing and doesn't have a much broader aspect. Evidence also suggests that not only is the uptake of GCSE computer science particularly poor, but if you take a student that has taken it and then average out all their grades, the computer science grade will be a grade lower than all their other subjects. And that's before we get into the fact that the engagement for girls is even lower than it is for boys. So the recommendations that have been brought out in this report that the government is looking at is that there should be much more clarity in the computing curriculum about what students should be taught, because it really is a bit of Wild West out there. And also to replace GCSE computer science with computing GCSE, which is embracing a wider computing curriculum. And finally, to review where digital skills and technologies are part of other subjects other than computing, and to actually consider aligned with the computing curriculum. I'll give you one example of that because it might not be too clear. My daughter is currently at high school and they're doing a history project at the moment where they're looking at an old castle, and she's been tasked to do a contour map model like we always used to do. And of course, there's an opportunity to do that with a 3D printer and digital mapping and stuff like that, but there's no joined up thinking between the departments. So the review is suggesting that this sort of thing starts to change. Anyway, the government is planning to revise the curriculum. They haven't said how they're going to do it yet. They're going to publish that in 2027, and new stuff is coming from 2028.
By which point everything will have changed all over again.
Yes.
What's your reaction to this then, Lee? You've laid out where we are. I mean, do you think this is just a complete mess? Do you think we should drop the subject and just integrate computer science into everything else? What is your thinking?
I think computing is definitely one of those bolt-on forgotten subjects, possibly a bit like modern languages these days. There's so much focus on maths, science, and basically English that everything else gets forgotten. And, a lot of the problems that my daughters have is, and one of them's got computing twice today, one of them had computing yesterday, and I sat down with them last night and said, what are the problems? And the main one is, and you have to focus this on the back of massive years of education cuts, where schools are absolutely pared to the bone. So the major problem with my daughter's education is it's just a constant stream of supply teachers. So there's no one teacher coming in to teach the subject. So every time they're doing a lesson, because it's one of the forgotten subjects, there's no real focus. It's anyone is basically dragged into the room to do it. So, and of course, because there's so few people taking it, you then have that snowball problem of who's going to teach it in the future. Also, there's no notes, there's no textbooks in my daughter's school for this. One of them had an exam last year with no revision material. And at the end of the year, when the results were published, computing had been removed from the scorecard. You know, I'm not saying this is typical at all, but if this happens with, you know, other subjects like maths, there'd be parental uproar. And AI is the other problem. My daughter yesterday, their lesson, if just to explain how this works in a modern setting, you don't have a pen and paper anymore. You have a tablet and you open basically the school's version of Microsoft Teams, and everything that they write, what they would write in their exercise book, if you remember those, they type into a PowerPoint presentation. But they're now allowed to go onto the internet and search for the answer, and it seems to be acceptable for them to paste the AI answers straight into the PowerPoint. So what they're actually learning is cut and paste. They're not actually learning the subject at all. It all seems a bit rough. Barry, I know your kids are not too far away from mine. I don't know if yours has got similar experience.
Yeah, I think in fact, my daughter's doing her mock exams at the moment. She said the other day she went to a health and social exam, and it was in the same room as the computer science exam. Every member of the computer science exam was boys, and all the girls were in the health and social. But I think the big problem, there's two problems, right, in terms of computing in senior school level. One is that it suddenly becomes an option at year 10, and they've never really done it before. And so certainly I remember having that discussion with my daughter about, like, do you want to consider this one as an option? She's like, well, I've never done it. I don't know what this is. It's really hard, and I think if you've not got an interest in computing, and traditionally that's always largely been boys, as borne out by experience in the school, it's really difficult for you to take a subject when you've had no grounding in it for the past 10 years of your education. And the other, I think, is you were touching on the curriculum, and I remember covering this for PC Pro 10 years ago, and this same issue comes up and time again. But the reason the curriculum is so vague is because, and this is at university level as well to some degree, that just a pun, that you can't make the curriculum very specific on particular applications or programming languages because things change very quickly. So it all becomes this sort of kind of abstract teaching about concepts rather than anything specific. And I think that's what a lot of people find frustrating and perhaps surprising when they start on these courses. But there's very little kind of practical hands-on stuff that might be applicable in a workplace, because by the very nature, as you say, curriculum changes are very slow by nature. Exam boards are very slow. It takes a long time for this to work through. And so for a topic like computing, it's very hard to drill down into specifics that are going to be out of date by the time the kids get out into the real world.
But one comment made on Discord was that it was right at the start, so I've lost who it was. Sorry, was that the teacher knew less than they did about computing, but what they did know was how to draw a flowchart. And actually, that does take you back to some fundamentals of programming. Not that I'm very good at programming, but that could still be useful even today. And this is the week where vibe coding was decided to be the word of the year by the Oxford Dictionary or something similar. But John, I'm interested in your thoughts on this topic as well.
Well, I don't have teenage children, so my exposure to this nonsense is, from at least from my mental health point of view, quite restricted. It all does seem to be a complete mess, really, and it seems to be a mess of finger pointing and blaming and shifting and let's have another review. And I have lost count of the number of times there's been education reviews and trying to change things around, and then they do it again, and so on and so forth. And it just seems like utter madness. Almost if you could be really cynical, almost to the point of saying that most of the people involved in this, especially at a local educational, national educational level, seem to be permanently employed in having meetings. and actually educating the children seems to come very, very low on the list of priorities, which is really quite depressing. I mean, yes, we could talk about should we be teaching programming, and as you say, programming changes. Should we be teaching people about cloud or not cloud or e-commerce? And there's a whole bunch of really, really interesting topics that should be covered off as sort of units within some sort of a proper framework. I would even go as radical as to say, fundamentals of TCP/IP and Wi-Fi and networking and how the internet actually works, because that is still going to be, our good old IPv4 is still going to be there in 20 years' time, despite what the IPv6 brigade want to say. And so some fundamentals of the plumbing, it's like the computing equivalent of basic maths and basic spelling and grammar, would be awfully useful and really good tools for helping people understand better, and then building up on concepts from the top of that. Maybe I'm in the wrong job. Maybe I should go in with the big stick and sort all of this stuff out.
Well, and just to say, they do teach some of that, because one of my sons did A-level computing, and they did cover all that kind of stuff. The foundation, more of the foundations of computing in there. He found it very tedious, by the way. But,
every time I come across a sort of an 18-year-old or undergraduate in the computing-related space, you just ask them, what is a subnet mask? And just get the complete glazed look and say, oh no, we're working on AI and LLMs. And it's like, what?
It's probably more useful to them, to be fair, but certainly right now.
Well, yes and no. If you can't count numbers, there's no point trying to do a maths degree. If you can't understand how the fundamentals of computing
maths
works,
degree has very little to do with numbers.
Maybe it should. Bar humbug. But no, I mean, I'm frustrated that these fundamentals have been there for 30 years. These aren't changing. Yes. And we should be having, e-commerce and so forth, and encryption and so forth. These haven't changed in 25, 30 years. Why are we not teaching these fundamental building blocks?
Well, this is what I'm saying. I think we don't. None of us are teachers, and I suspect that actually one of the points that Lee was making, unless I misunderstood Lee, is that there's a lot of flexibility in terms of the topics you can cover.
Yeah.
So a lot of the courses will include that. Barry, do you want to add anything before we move on to anything else?
Well, the only thing I would say is that the frustrating thing I found with my daughter is she was starting to do some of the computing at home. She was Minecraft in particular, learning how to I forget what the stuff's called, the programming language in Minecraft of Redstone, is it? Where you're having to automate blocks and whatever. She was doing that. She was doing it in Roblox. Like her and her friends were setting up shops and automating the prices of things in the shop and stuff. And I was thinking, this is great. She's picking it up by herself. And then by the time you get to school, it's like it's not picked up on at all. So I hope in some kind of curriculum review, they're looking at try and nurture that interest that kids already have, because they're doing it in their spare time. And then they get to school and then it sort of fades away.
Yeah, well, there was a whole MacBook we did back in the days. This is Dennis Publishing about coding using Minecraft. I believe it's quite popular. Before we go, I do just want to give due. Oh my God, too many people are commenting. Ian Clark was the person who mentioned about flowcharts. So there you go, Ian. You get full credit for that. Okay, moving on to the next item, which is very much about a glitzy end package. Barry, well, not that Barry is the glitzy end package.
Yes, so this is an announcement from Steam made yesterday about a new gaming PC. All right, Tim, you look like you're going to interrupt me.
No, sorry, I was I think how bad my link was actually, and then I was grimacing to myself about that and feeling shame.
I was just trying to ignore it, but we've ruined it between us, so that's fine. This is a Steam machine. Readers with long memories may remember about 10 years ago, Valve had a little stab at this previously, where they released an early version of Steam OS and then worked with a number of third-party manufacturers like Alienware and Zotac to produce Steam machines, each of which were of a different spec. And it didn't really fly at the time. Steam OS was still very at a very early stage, and
It took 3 years as well, didn't it, from announcement to delivery?
And well, I think the key thing was the Proton Linux layer just wasn't there. So a lot of the games, the Windows games, just couldn't be played on SteamOS machines. So it died a pretty horrible death, if we're being honest. So they've come back at it. And obviously the big factor that's changed here is the Steam Decks. Valve have had a massive success with the Steam Deck handhelds over the past 3 or 4 years. Even now, the Steam Deck that was released probably, I think, 2-3 years ago now, is still the best gaming handheld there is, even though several manufacturers have tried to build versions on top of Windows. In fact, a lot of them now are turning to SteamOS themselves because they realise Windows just doesn't work as a handheld gaming OS. And so Steam, maybe with a bit of wind in its sails, has come back with another stab at Steam machines, except this time they're doing them themselves. It's one machine. It's a little tiny cube. It's about the size of like a sort of a fat mini PC, like an Apple Studio, not far off the size of the Apple Studio, but more cubes. And it looks really nice. It's a little black box. They've got changeable face plates, so you can have different designs on, little LED strip running across that's going to do cool things like if you've installed in the game, the LED strip will work as a progress bar so you can tell when a game's installed, that kind of stuff. It all looks very, very smooth, very nice. These are based on sort of custom-made ARM processors, but both the CPU and the GPU. The only slight concern I have is the sort of complement of memory that's available. So it's only 16 gigabytes of DDR5. Go on.
I'm just going to correct you. It's AMD, not ARM.
Sorry, AMD. Yep. Apologies. So 16 gigabytes and only 8 gigabytes of VRAM. So that's quite slight by today's gaming rig standards. But you've got to bear in mind that this is again based on Linux, not Windows. So you haven't got all the Windows overheads to go with it. And maybe Valve know what they're doing here, but we'll see. But they claim it's going to have 6 times the power of the Steam Deck handheld, and that it will run any of the games in the Steam library at 4K at 60 frames per second. So, you know, we'll wait and see until this thing arrives and we can start benchmarking it, whether that actually bears true. But it does sound like it's going to be reasonable performance. So with that, they've launched 2 new accessories as well. So there's a new Steam controller that will work with any PC or Mac as well, not just the Steam machine. That borrows the same concept from the Steam Deck controller, where you have touchpads underneath each stick. So if you've got a game that's predominantly played with mouse and keyboard, it's much easier to manipulate that with touchpads than it is trying to wiggle around with controller sticks. They've also got a new VR headset called the Steam Frame. Again, this works both standalone, so it's got its own Snapdragon 8 processor, so you can run games locally. It runs SteamOS locally, but it's also available for streaming. So for the more advanced games, high performance games, it comes with its own Wi-Fi 6 dongle that you can plug into either the Steam machine or a gaming PC and stream games to the headset as well. That's 2160 by 2160 what do you call it, not sensors but displays under each eye, and I think they were talking about battery life in sort of the region of 8 to 10 hours. So also comes with a pair of controllers that are very similar to the Steam Deck one, they just don't have the touchpads on them. So there's a whole set here, a compendium of hardware. You don't have to buy, you can buy each of them independently. They're not a complete set. The only thing we don't know right now is pricing. They're due to arrive early 2026, but we don't have any firm guide on pricing. They said in a piece they did with The Verge that in terms of the Steam machine, they want to price it comparably to PCs of a similar specification. They weren't particularly targeting the console market, so I suspect we're going to look at high hundreds for the entry-level unit. And there's going to be 2 versions, by the way, one with 512 gigabytes of storage, one with 2 terabytes of storage. So, but I think if they can get the pricing certainly sub £1,000, it's going to be a very interesting time ahead next year.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if certainly the base model is over £1,000. I'd expect it to be, if you compare it to the mini PCs that this is going up against in some ways, those typically cost around 700 quid, I'd say, for this kind of spec. So so that's roughly what I would expect to see. But yeah, well, Lee, do you want one?
Do I want to? No, because I'm not really a gamer of that sort, but I am impressed by this. And what I particularly like about it is that though they're offering 3 products that all work together, they also work independently as well. So, if you have a Steam Deck already, a Steam controller will fit very nicely into your gaming repertoire. You can then bolt your Steam Deck into a larger screen, and you can sit back rather than having to hold the handheld, and you've got all the lovely sort of haptic feedbacks and the thumbsticks and the trackpads that you know and love. And they're claiming 35-hour playtime on the Steam controller, which is great. And the frame, as I've said on this podcast before, I've never had a VR headset on my head. Every time I've been offered one, it's always the smell that puts me off. But if the price is right on this, you never know, because with it being basically a full-on PC in your head, there might be some nice, interesting things that can be done with that. So my interest has been piqued. But the Steam Machine, I think, is just a natural step for them. If they price it right, I think there's a potential to go for it to go well. The only thing that makes me slightly nervous, and obviously we haven't got further details on it, is when they say it's available in 2 storage sizes, 512 and 2 terabyte. And if anyone is playing Steam recently will know that 512 isn't going to last long with a lot of games. But then it says both come with expandable storage via micro SD, which is great. And obviously it is a simple way for people to be able to upgrade the storage on their device. But I'm slightly concerned that, are they saying that because we can't upgrade the internal drives? Obviously we haven't got that detail yet, because Steam Deck are renowned for making things that are fixable, customizable. They really understand their gamers' desire to modify them. I've covered in RWC before about changing buttons and stuff on Steam Decks that people have had customized. They bought button packs off Vinted that people have made, and they all fit beautifully. So I'm hoping that it is just purely a customer convenience bit of marketing PR, and actually you can get the back off and actually upgrade those drives if you want to. So yes, I am enthusiastic. So I'll have one for free if anyone's chucking them out, but I won't buy one.
Just to answer on that question, so from what I understand, yes, you'll be able to take off the back and repair. You'll be able to replace the memory, for example. I think the processor and the GPU and the storage, I think, certainly look like they were soldered down, because they're sort of effectively laptop components these days, aren't they? They're not replaceable devices. So
do you mean that the RAM was soldered down and the storage was replaced?
The RAM, I think, was the one thing that was replaceable and user upgradable. I think the rest was not, from memory. This is just me watching a video, so this off the top of my head. Regarding the SD card, so the key thing there is that they also do that on the Steam Deck. So the idea is that if you've got a library of games on your Steam Deck and you just want to quickly transfer to the desktop, you can pop out your SD card from your Steam Deck and pop it into the Steam machine. So it's a convenience thing. But I agree, I certainly wouldn't want to store my games on an SD card by default.
John, are you taken?
I like the idea that they're expanding their hardware, software family of products. I think that's a very good thing. I'm certainly of the opinion that if you want to try and do things properly, you have to supply the whole package. The software, the hardware, the operating system, and then the games platform in this particular case. I wonder what it's going to do for sales of like Xbox and PlayStation. That's not my market, although I have obviously got one of each. I'm not a great games player, and when I am, it's either Doom or Quake or Microsoft Flight Simulator. But it's going to be very interesting to see how much space there is in this market for people to spend more money on more hardware units. And so that's going to be a very interesting part. Also, of course, as you say, it's an entirely targeted platform. This is not Windows with a games lump put on it. It's not a mini PC from that point of view. It's an entirely dedicated platform. But then you're probably going to be plugging into your big telly and using controllers with it. This is not something you're going to want to be doing normal day-to-day computing on. So I think it's really interesting.
Well, just on that point as well. I mean, they did make a point. So Steam OS does have a desktop mode. It's based on Arch Linux, so it's a Linux desktop. But in the trailer video, they did show the Steam Deck, Steam machine being used on a desktop with someone using it on a multi-monitor display as a desktop computer as well, and saying you can install it wherever you like. So there's a limit to, I think, to that Linux desktop market, but they're not just viewing it purely as a games machine either.
And it's worth just mentioning its connectivity, because you do have a DisplayPort output, HDMI output, and an Ethernet input as well, along with Wi-Fi 6E. So there's a decent amount of offerings there. I'm very interested in this. I won't buy them because very much like John, I'm not really that target market. But if it can deliver on the promises and deliver 60 plus frame rates in 1080p that look good on a big screen TV, then I do think this could be very successful indeed. Okay, all right, let us move on to the next story. And just looking that up, that is
with me.
With you. Oh yes, it's John. What have you been up to, John?
Well, yesterday I got extra booster shots and my passport out of the cupboard because I went to Norfolk. I went to Norwich, or as they call it up there, Norwich.
There goes another section of the audience.
Bye everyone. See you soon.
Which is a lovely place, and I really like Norwich. And I tell you why, it's got a lovely cathedral, but also it's big enough and far enough away from places like London and Cambridge to stand on its own feet. Now there is a very good university up there, University of Norwich, and what they were showcasing yesterday was a collaboration they've just announced and opened, a collaboration between the Norwich University of the Arts and Sony. I don't mean domestic Sony, I mean Sony Professional. This is the Sony that does huge video walls and broadcast cinema digital cameras and all of that big stuff. So nothing to do with Walkman and your tabletop record player. And what they have done here is they have this video production studio, which is in a huge warehouse on the outskirts of Norwich. And in there, they've got three interesting rooms. I'm going to just drop a couple of photos across onto our podcast channel there. They've got this immersive 360-degree room, which is these are all very high-resolution LED panels in a 360 display. And I can tell you, putting PowerPoint on that is really quite something. Holding business meetings in that kind of space is amazing. Next door to it, they've got a full green screen immersive space. Which obviously you can then do green screen and create, drop people into these fully synthetic environments. But the thing that's interesting is what they were launching yesterday is this full, what they call virtual production studio. So I'm going to drop another picture of that in there. So what this is really interesting, and I was incredibly impressed. I have seen this technology before, but this is the first time I've seen it rolled out into a university campus studio for training purposes. You have this very high resolution screen at the back, which is lots and lots of pixels. I'm trying to remember how many pixels. 6.7 million pixels in the back. It's 9 meters wide, 4 meters high. And you have this sort of set area in front in which you can obviously build a foreground set. And the example they gave yesterday, which did make me drool, was a set area of like a desert area with one of Colin McRae's rally cars there. I understand it was they were helped by one of the studios down in London on building this, Pinewood Studios. So basically, the really fun thing here is the image that's on the video wall at the back is not like a static image. It's generated in real time in 3D immersive software. And the camera is tracking this position in real time within the studio. So as you move the camera, move the angle, the whole system knows where the camera is and where it's looking. And it's not just absolute position, height above the ground, rotation. It's also down to things like the focal length of the lens, the depth of field of the lens, the angle of view of the lens, and so forth. And the background generates the view from that position correctly to seamlessly extend the view into this virtual space beyond the physical reality. Does that kind of make sense? So as you move the camera around, the background is being repainted in real time for the perspective of where the camera is. It's really, really clever stuff. There are a number of people doing this. I know ILM have been doing this, but Sony are a big player in this space as well. And it was Sony's place that we went to look at. It was a very, very cool technology indeed. And it uses, obviously, being a Sony collaboration, they're using Sony's high-end digital cameras in this space. They're Venice cameras, which are really very, very nice. And these are what they call Verona panels in the background, and they are very bright. These are high resolution, very high accuracy panels, and you can't see the join in these panels. These actually butt together with no lines or nastiness at all. So this is hotter than hot. Now, as an environment for the likes of a Pinewood Studios or whatever, this is obviously the new reality. It's the new reality in Hollywood, because it means you can take a set or components and use it in whatever time frame you like, any positioning you like. If you don't like the mountains in the background, swap it out for something else. If you want it to be sunset or middle of the day, change the lighting around. You've got flexibility here that you simply don't have. And also it means you can have what looks like here Colin McRae's car in, I think it was originally Arizona, without taking Colin McRae's car to Arizona. So, the flexibility here is amazing. So why have they done this? Well, obviously, the department at the University of Norwich is very hot on this space. And they think it's going to be a hugely powerful teaching tool for them to bring students up to speed with this kind of technology. For Sony's point of view, obviously, it makes perfect sense for them to capture them young, get them used to the Sony platform and the way of doing things, because who knows where these students will be in 10, 15 years' time, and maybe they'll have the checkbook to implement these things in their own studios in the future. Cost of this particular installation? Well, it depends how you buy it. If you got a turnkey, I asked the Sony chaps there, and they said, if you'd gone out to a production house and said, build me this in this space, I want the cameras, I want everything necessary to make this work, it's about 1.3 million quid. Okay, which sounds a lot of money, but isn't when you start thinking of the cost of moving talent and stuff around the world and all that enormous cost. They got it for a lot cheaper than that, and two reasons for that, one of which is Sony obviously does an educational discount, as you would expect, but also they didn't get a third-party company in to build this. They got the students to build it all themselves. They did it as an in-house project, as also part of the learning experience. And I was blown sideways by this. I've seen it before. I've seen the Sony system before. I've been to Pinewood and so forth, and this stuff really does work. And it really is as good as you would think it would be. And I think it's revolutionary capability. As I said, there are other players in this space, but I was at Sony yesterday.
Do you think it's going to enable or give us a new type of show, John?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, suddenly, you want to go and put pussycats in space, no problem. Because you are not limited by the physical space that you're in, and it's not. You've got a foreground space that you can put people, props, real stuff in, and then you have this virtual environment behind. And they have. It's not just this. They have a whole platform here of third-party companies and tools and stuff. So building like little tabletop miniatures you can actually put a camera into, and then see it all correctly in space and rendered. And the Sony Venice cameras allow you to, like Arri does as well, you can detach the camera bit from the processing bit and put a big 30, 40 meter cable between the two, which means you've got a much smaller unit. You can put, for example, through the window of the car into much smaller spaces. And because the background is really there and showing and shining, you get all the stuff you would expect, like reflections and perspective changes, and all of that stuff just works. So this is absolutely on a different planet to trying to do stuff in front of a green screen with, a ping pong ball on the end of a stick.
Can I ask something? Sorry. So with the example of Mr. McRae's car there,
Yep.
That's obviously static, and you've only got a certain amount of space behind for the screen. It's not full surround. So there's still limits, I guess, to what you can do in terms of shooting from different angles, because you can't move that car, for example, because immediately you got the wall.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, this is not a huge installation, but then, to be blunt, it's 1.3 million quid. If you're the likes of Industrial Light and Magic, you've got, or a big Hollywood studio, you've got this technology, or from an equivalent third party, in a much bigger space and environment. But it's the same stuff.
Okay, so my next question is then why not CGI it?
Because it never's going to look as nice, and how are you going to put your talent into a CGI generated environment? You can't put a real person into a CGI space.
Well, they sort of do, don't they?
Well, yeah, but then you're effectively green screen, and the talent can't see what's going on around them because all they see is a green wall and so forth. I mean, I'm not saying that any solution here is perfect. What I'm saying is this absolutely has a place.
Okay.
I'm just interested in Lee's point of view, because Lee actually has a TV production background.
Yeah, I like things like this, and I think Barry and Donna discussed a very nice use case. You can imagine I'd say a huge version of one of these at sort of ILM or Metro Goldwyn Mayer, or those classic film studios, I'm sure still exist. And there's actors walking around on a full set, and it saves a lot of messing around because I would imagine there is a production reduction here because they don't have to spend hours taking green screens out and stuff like that when they get the setup right. But where I thought even this small sort of £1.3 million version will work very nicely is just in basic studios for news and for sports events. When you've got a sports presenter sat in front of Barnsley Metrodome or something, I'm here for the big match or something like that, and they're not. They're sat in a cupboard somewhere in BBC Media Centre, but this wall makes it look like they're, and no matter where you shove that camera, they can stream in the real live pictures of wherever they are. They can do so much more in such a small amount of space. And given the way that TV budgets are going, all right, this isn't a cheap bit of kit, but long term, roll it out and rent that out to anyone that's passing by that wants to make programs. I think, apart from physical space saving, I think there's a huge amount of potential in this technology.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you for telling us for what you did yesterday. I think it's a new segment.
What did John do yesterday?
Alienate Norwich.
Yeah. Lee, let's move on to a slightly more serious story, or is it?
I'll let you decide. It all comes from a report by Dan Goodin from Ars Technica about something called ClickFix. This is where sort of the main stem is. And basically, this is a tech scam which is apparently doing the rounds at the moment. And I'll explain how it works, and we'll plod on from there. The setup is basically like this. So contact is made to the mark, the target, using some sort of typical phishing trope, an email claiming to be from a hotel, but the hook is there are genuine details in here. We'll discuss how that bit works later on, or it can also work by a WhatsApp message is pertaining the sort of same, and the person that gets it is directed to a website which has a capture challenge, and they click all that in, and click the banana, etc., and things like that. And once that's all complete, they get a instruction on the screen to copy a text string and paste it into the command or terminal window and press enter. So you can see how immediately this has sort of happened. And what happens, and sorry if I haven't mentioned it, this is called the ClickFix scam at the moment. So what happens when people put in the text string is the machine will pull in a stack of malware which will install without user intervention. And it's all the usual credential stealing stuff. And according to some security researchers, a lot of endpoint protections don't detect it. So it hops past your antivirus without even setting anything off at all, which is not great. Now, this is a similar type of scam to Amos. Name Mr. Wilkes. Just made me laugh. A reference there for the younger listeners. Sorry about that. Amos stands for Atomic Mac OS Stealer. Does exactly the same thing with malware downloading onto the Mac platform, but it bypasses Gatekeeper, which is Mac OS's security feature designed to sort of basically software comes from trusted sources. This particular flavor works by malvertising. Spoof and bogus web pages appear in your search. How can I install my printer on MacBook, and depending on which search engine you're using, you may get a good result or a bogus one which looks genuine, and people will happily tap in the same command string and get hooked. And there's a third variation, which is published which was sort of linked to the original article, but it was published on a blog by Sequoia this week. And it details this hotel booking scam that I mentioned, which is basically cyber criminals have been for some time breaching hotel accounts. So your independent sort of hotels, and sort of working out how to tap into that hotel's, I guess, system that links them to the big booking players, your Booking.coms, your Expedias, your Airbnbs and stuff like that. So basically, the cyber criminals breach the independent hotel or the hotel chain. The click fix tactic is deployed. It uses something called Pure Rat this time, which is a tool which is basically a big snooping. It monitors all the conversations between the hotel and the guest to collect reservation details. And this is how people are triggered by being sent what seemingly is genuine information. The hackers impersonate the hotel by replying to real compromised email addresses, making all the communication appear legitimate. Guests pay, often twice, because they pay once to the scammers, once when they turn up at the hotel, wondering why nothing's being paid for. And it carries on like that. So in answer to your question, I suppose, Tim, isn't anyone going to fall for that? If you ask most of our PC Pro readers, are they going to, type in a command string from some web page they've got? But I'll tell you, people do, because they stand in front of me with their computers in their hands, trembling, fearing to turn it on. Because with all scams, with any scams, the technical aspects of this are all completely irrelevant. It is purely a confidence trick. And if the mark believes the person on the other end of the phone is genuine, or the information they've been sent is genuine, when they're spouting, correct booking references, it's hard not to be convinced, I suppose. Then, providing the requests are not too extravagant, customers will do pretty much what they want.
Yes, and actually, I did see this in action, I've realised, in January this year. When I was staying at a hotel in France, where there was a spate of these WhatsApp messages that were sent to various people. I didn't fall for it, by the way, but yes, it did definitely happen there. So, John, what do you think? Should we be afeared or not?
I think we should always be fearful. The amount of rubbish that comes into your space and my space on a daily basis. Let's even go as far as say an hourly basis. I seem to have got onto some sort of scam email list, possibly on the back of CES registration or something like that. And I'm now getting dozens of nonsense a day. It's just started in the last 3 days, and it's just email, and it's rubbish, and I'm just setting up blocking rules and all the rest of it. It's kind of relatively easy to do on email. It's not quite so easy to do when you start getting into the likes of WhatsApp and stuff like that, or a Twitter message, or X as we should call it, or whatever. I said some years ago we really needed to have my own cloud-based gatekeeper that could actually be the digital me, my digital persona, and it could then handle all of this stuff and just not trouble with many of this stuff. Why are we still having to worry about spam and malcontent and so forth in 2025? It seems faintly ridiculous, really.
Yeah, the thing is that we have, even if you had AI agents, let's say, handling it for you, though, John, then they might be suckered by this in some strange way. So you can't just delegate it out entirely to third-party solutions.
No, it's a long tail thing, but the more compute power you can throw at the problem, which equals monthly subscription cost, obviously, at the end of the day, the more compute power you throw at it, the more rubbish you can filter out. Nothing will ever be perfect other than the 6-inch air gap.
Okay. Well, Barry, unless you've got something you wish to say.
Not really.
Not really. This is golden radio. I put golden podcasting here.
You asked me.
It's true, but come up with some energy with your excuses or something. Anyway, let's move on to the nibs, shall we, before everyone signs off. So we're going to start off with actually something that is a huge story that we'll keep on rumbling on, but we're probably going to wait until we have one of our lawyer friends on the podcast before we go into it in any depth, because Meta has basically been hit with a report that suggests that it has been, how am I going to put this without being sued, that it's been taking money from scammers, knowing that they're scammers, and rather than just blocking them, this report alleges, this is by Reuters, if I remember correctly. Then what they've done is they simply charge the scammers more money. And so the end result of this is, so you got this, basically that shows that they know they're slightly dodgy, and yet they're still showing their ads, even though the victims are going to be their users. And this has raised around $7 billion of revenue for Meta, equating to roughly 10% of its overall revenue model. So you can see why, kind of from a business point of view, from the CFO's point of view, let's keep this quiet. But from a keeping your users safe and keeping everyone trusting your brand, possibly not such a wise move if it proves to be true in the detail that's laid out. Please come back, Roche, at the end of this month and set me straight. So that's nib number one. Nib number two is with you, John.
Yes, I have a particular hatred of smart TVs. I want my TV to be a TV, thank you, and I'll put my smart things into external boxes and services, whether it's an Apple TV or a Skybox or whatever. Obviously, the smart TV manufacturers think differently and really want to be the centre of my TV world. And they've been getting progressively more invasive, if I can put it politely, over the years. Samsung is now rolling out an AI solution across its 2025 TVs called Visual AI Companion. It's based upon the generative AI based upon Bixby, which of course we all know and love. So basically this will allow you to ask your TV questions about what's going on the TV. So it'll be watching the same thing that you're watching, and then you can ask it, you know, who the actor is and what they've been in recently, or you know, what the score is on a football game, or any of these kind of things, because it will be able to take the context and look it up. This to me, I'm sure it's going to be very lovely for some people, and I will beat it to death with a big stick.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. All right, Lee, final nib with you.
New this week from the dusty archives of the Cullert School of Computing at the University of Utah. They've unearthed a tape containing, are you ready for this? Unix 4th edition. Possibly, well, they've yet to confirm it. The signs are good, and also, why does this matter? Well, for people who care about computing heritage, apparently there is no complete copy of Unix 4 in existence, and we're going back to 1973 here. Unix v4 was the first version where the kernel was written in C, and the Unix Heritage Society, I know, who knew, has a copy of the programmer's manual and the source for what would become 4's kernel, but changes made between that and the release, history has forgotten, or placed in a bin in Utah, it would seem. Professor Robert Ritchie of the Cullert School of Computing has identified the label on the box as being handwritten by his late colleague, but it gets better. A bit of sleuthing has revealed that the tape was sent by AT&T to the University of Utah and received by Professor Martin Newell, who is the creator of the Utah Teapot. And if you don't know what the Utah Teapot is, then that's a bit of homework for you. Anyway, work is now on to try and get the data off a 50-year-old 9-track backup tape and restore a little bit of computing history.
Thank you. Beautifully told. Right, John, what is the hot hardware this week?
Well, we need to have a little story about cameras and video. The problem with high-resolution cameras, not a problem with stills, but certainly a big problem when it comes to doing video, is the sheer enormous amount of data that you generate, especially when you start doing high resolution and high frame rate. Now, love it or loathe it, the smartphone has been getting awfully good in recent years. Yes, it will not replace a Sony Venice camera, as we were talking about earlier, but there's still an awful lot of use cases out there where a leading-edge smartphone can do an astonishingly good job. And for the purposes of this discussion, we're talking here about the Apple iPhone 17 Pro range, or the Pro Max, because it has capabilities in its video camera which you can't use on the phone by itself. And the reason for this is the data rate. If you want to shoot in ProRes format, which is a low loss compression format, and you want to shoot in either log format, and if you know about high-end digital cameras, you'll understand what log is, or in full HDR, and you want to do it in high resolution.
Log is.
Sorry,
carry on. Nothing. I was just doing a bad joke. Carry on, John.
And you want to do it in 4K, and you want to do not just like 30 frames a second, but maybe you want to do 60 frames a second or even 120 frames a second for really buttery smooth high resolution video. You have a problem, and the problem is the data rate, because the internal storage within your phone is not fast enough to consume that amount of data. Now, what are we talking here about data? We are talking here, let me just bring up my little window here, 40 seconds. So if I do ProRes format 4K 120 frames a second, which is the highest that a 17 Pro will do, Pro Max will do, 40 seconds of video is 15.5 gigabytes, which, you know, your 256 gig phone, not so good. But it's also the internal storage of your phone, and this is a 2 terabyte one, and that's just not fast enough to deal with this amount of data. As you can imagine, you're talking here, what, 25 gigabytes a minute, roughly kind of rate. So what do? And the answer is, it's very simple. You plug in some external storage on USB-C. This is a Samsung T8. I think it is the T8, 1 terabyte drive, and that's more than fast enough plugged into your USB-C port to do this in full res, and the quality is astonishingly good. And I actually posted a link to some test files onto the chat forum a couple of weeks ago. And this is the highest end of what you can do. But what if you want to go more? What if you want to actually take this up to as far as it can really go?
Have we switched to a different?
Here I have for you, Tim. I have for you the box here, and there's a new box out from those lovely people down in Australia called Blackmagic Design, and it's called the Pro Dock. And the Pro Dock here is an external interface box that plugs into your phone. Now, this is not designed to be dangled off the bottom of your phone. This is designed to go into a mounting frame that you're hand holding, maybe with gimbals on it or whatever. But this is designed to be bolted onto a frame with the camera mounted into it, handles and so forth. So what does this give you? Well, it gives you a USB-C connector, but it also gives you a whole bunch of interesting ports. It gives you USB-C 3.2, USB, two of those, USB 2.0, HDMI output, which is really interesting because from the HDMI output, you can go to an external big monitor if you wanted to look at that. Or you could go into a box like an Atomos box and record onto an external screen like what Atomos does. But it's got headphone sockets, audio in and out. But where it's really funky, it's got two BNC connectors, one of which is SMPTE, SMPTE, Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers timecode, which is the industry timecode that TV and film runs on. So you can push timecode into this and then onto the recording. But also it has Genlock. Genlock allows you to lock the frame rate synchronization between this and other things that you're maybe shooting. So for example, let's say you're up against one of these video wall backgrounds. You can take the Genlock feed from the video wall background, put it into the camera, and then they will be synced together. You won't get any of that nasty tearing and bleeding and chuntering around that you might get otherwise. This little box is really useful. It has power. It comes in on you can tell it's a pro-grade product. It has yes, it's a DC barrel, but it actually has a rotating screw lock on it to lock it in, and that's the mains power adapter that comes with it. But it's just 12 volts DC. You can power this off any pro-grade video camera battery pack with an adapter cable, so you don't have to be tied to the mains. But this allows you to record and keep going and record terabytes of storage off this thing before you run out of battery and you run out of storage, but you can still do it at the highest resolution. And it's going to record in ProRes, and you can then drop that into your favorite video editing tool, whether that is, you know, Blackmagic, DaVinci or whatever, and do really, really highest end recording here. Now, where is the specification for these things? What does it cost? Here is the let me just drop this into the window here, if I can get that window out of the way.
Ian's already done it for you.
He's already done it for me. Okay, there's the specifications for it. Sorry, I can't see that. The cost, you can buy it through various routes, but I bought it through Apple's UK store, so it's kind of like an Apple-blessed accessory. And remember, we talked earlier in previous pods about the close relationship between Apple and Blackmagic with the immersive camera and so forth. 249 quid. 90.95, including VAT, for this. Now, this has absolutely no value to you whatsoever unless you want to do the high-res, high frame rate, quasi-pro, semi-pro, fantastic piece of kit for those students up at the University of Norfolk, for example, to go out and do really high quality footage without carrying around a really big, expensive £10,000, £20,000, £30,000 video camera. Not the same piece of kit, but there's an awful lot of people out there in Hollywood land and so forth who are using things like high-end iPhones and so forth for B-roll, for rushes, for all sorts of capability there, for which it's absolutely perfect. So I really like it, and I bought it, and I've been using it. I've got a frame coming on order that I can bolt this onto and battery packs on the side to actually turn it into a full handheld rig. I'm going to have a world of fun with this. And I think they've nailed it completely. It's got exactly what I wanted on it in terms of capability. And when you see what, as 40 Runner says on the channel, given the cost of high-end USB docks these days, it's not expensive. Absolutely not. And you find me a way of getting Genlock and timecode into a Samsung S25 Ultra or whatever. You just can't do it.
Okay, thank you, John. That was an excellent presentation. I do actually think you are wasted doing whatever the heck you do. You should be working on QVC because that was amazing, really slick. Okay, Lee, as again our resident TV guy, what do you reckon? Any questions?
I've got no question. John described that absolutely beautifully. I think. There is a lot to love here, and the price is not amazingly frightening. So no questions from me, sir.
Okay, Barry, anything from you?
Not really. I did see just on a sort of tangential note earlier this week a similar thing from Charge, the American company, where you get an SSD that sort of magnetically sticks to the back of iPhones and other devices, and then you can plug storage into that as well. So I think for a lower, like non-professional use, that could be useful. But that obviously doesn't have all of the fancy synchronization stuff that John's talking about.
All right. So Barry, as you're still talking, I'm going to give you the first vote. Hot or not?
I know absolutely nothing about this market in meaningful sense, apart from my friend bought an iPhone 17 Pro, and last week we were standing at the Dripping Pan, the world's greatest football ground, and at the other end there is a mound behind the goal where some teenagers have been thrown out the ground. We're all stood on top of this mound celebrating a goal, and my friend zoomed in with the iPhone 17 Pro, and the zoom on that thing is absolutely amazing. So if it helps you to capture more stuff like that, then I'm all for it. So hot.
All right. Thank you. Barry, like you, I have very little knowledge of this area, and I bow to John's enthusiasm, and I say extremely hot, because it does seem to open up a huge number of realms of possibilities. So it's for that alone, it's quite exciting. Lee, hot or not?
It's absolutely hot. I know, in the modern world of broadcasting, there is so much which is shot on an iPhone or a very high mobile that we are absolutely unaware of, because things have improved that much, and this little thing just, I guess, helps whoever is being sent out to cover a news story that everything is not going to fall apart or run out of battery or run out of storage and things like that, whether they use the Genlock stuff or the timecode stuff, which obviously if they're on their own they won't. So the price is very, very reasonable, and because it's Blackmagic and they're doing this with Apple, sort of hand in hand, so to speak, you don't have to have the latest iPhone, I suppose, for this to work, because it's working off USB-C. So, there is chance for, as the iPhone develops, you just have this one bit of kit and it will grow with it, while USB-C is the connected format. So I see this as a nice little tool for anyone that does high-end video. So hot.
Just a drop in here. Ian Nock, my good friend who works in ultra-high dense high definition TV world, he says on the channel, the Genlock feature of iPhone 17 was expressly produced for 28 years later film, which used iPhones for doing most of the shots. So there you go. This is not a toy, and I fully accept that this is not for even 1% of our readers. But the whole point about hot hardware is we have to celebrate and respect interesting new tech, even if it's not for you.
Even keyboards?
Maybe.
Okay. And John, I'm going to assume that you are a hot.
Oh, I'm hot. I spent 249 quid of my own money on this. I've used it for real, for purposes. As Lee says, I haven't used Genlock and timecode on it yet because I've been doing, one-person shooting. But to actually, I've been sort of stuffing it into, the front of your hoodie and all this sort of stuff, waiting for the frame to come. But being able to have power into it and know that you can go out and shoot a few hours of very, very high quality video, that you're not going to run out of battery and you're not going to run out of storage is huge. And then when you start doing things like HDMI outputs from it and so forth, this is really quite something.
Okay, and so ends the Blackmagic sponsored PC Pro podcast. I probably should have told you that before, shouldn't I? It's not really. Okay, and I can tell you that the Blackmagic Camera Pro dock also earned the HOT award on the public votes, 73% versus 27%, so pretty dominant. Congratulations, John. You wish a warm feeling for the rest of the afternoon. All right, until our next podcast in a week's time, it's goodbye.
Bye.
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 Right. Okie dokie, folks. I will try and shut this
Right.
down without killing everyone. Hold on.